Hey, everybody, this is Marissa Alexander. This is Thinking Out Loud. I hope you guys are doing swell today. And I hope that for a Wednesday, it's not too hot or whatnot. I'm excited for you to come back and talk with me or at least join the discussion. So, it's been a lot going on already, and it's just Wednesday. And I was already really covering or thinking about discussing this story about a 76-year-old grandmother who has been sent back to prison, who got out on basically the CARES Act release. And so she's in Baltimore, Maryland. And I seen her story and I thought to myself, this is just absolutely, crazy. And one of those things that you can just tell where we don't get it right with this criminal justice system. It's very punitive. It makes a lot of nonsense. And so I wanted to make sure we talk about that. And then so happened, this afternoon, I suppose, then Bill Cosby was reversed. His case was reversed. Okay. So we have these two, really interesting stories as it relates to basically what happens in the criminal justice system and also how that affects the overall outcome and what does justice look like, what it doesn't look like, what's fair and what's not fair. And so for me, I felt like today would be as good a time as any to kind of talk about those things because these are really not in the same. It's the point is not really to discuss the same or the similarities of the case. It's really to talk about, the huge differences in between how the system, hands out justice or the lack thereof. So that's basically kind of what we're going to talk about. So I'm going to share a little video. The video is from FAM. FAM is Families Against Minimum Mandatories. And that's an organization that advocates against, sentencings that are obviously they are really egregious and they don't match the crime. And so you're talking about, hey, Davey, you're talking about, drug crimes. We seen a lot of federal drug crimes with the conspiracy to sell and distribute, where people got a lot of times for crack, obviously, and then the sentencing was not the same for, cocaine, which is basically the same. One is a powder form and one is not. So we know that there's a lot of people that are, have been sentenced and currently are still incarcerated because of those very harsh, drug crime with the minimum mandatory. And then the other thing is that we also seen that with marijuana as well. We still have people serving out life sentences and things like that for, something that's now actually being sold and it's available and it's not being penalized anymore. And believe it or not, I don't know if you know this, but there has been some legislation, at least at the Capitol in United States, at the Capitol, that has been introduced to literally a stroke of a pen let these people out. That doesn't make it probably to the Senate. They're sure they're gonna make it to the House. So that's that. So we're gonna talk about that, and then we're gonna talk about a little bit about Bill because I'd like to hear what y'all got to say. I had my own dealings with the criminal justice system, so I, try to reserve my not necessarily my opinion. I think we all have a right to it, but I try to look at it from a standpoint of what it looks like and what in other words, what we consider justice and what is not justice and what that looks like. My personal opinion after going through it myself is just it's no way that you will ever get any equitable relieving situation out of that situation. Well, excuse me, the criminal justice system that's going to like satisfy everybody. It's just not. And determine how we describe justice and how it actually shows itself. I think we're way far from it, and we just won't see what we think it needs to be on this side of eternity. So I'm gonna show you this video. This is Gwen Levy. She's 76 years old. So you hence my title. You throw your grandma in jail. She's a grandmother. She has 4 sons. She has grandsons and a 94-year-old mother that she cares for. She did 16 years out of her 35-year sentence. And she got out and she's been sent back on, guess what? A technicality. So check it out.
What to say? I'm just so excited. June 2nd, 2020, I was released on home confinement. To my family, a loving mother, 11 sisters and brothers, 4 boys. I've spent the last 10 months becoming an advocate for people who are returning home, especially women. I feel as though this opportunity that I've been given to come home, that I have to make the best of it.
When my mother came home, it was just a joyous moment for the family. I've seen her be a different person. You know, I've seen her reach out to help the unknown.
And then I wake up one morning and I hear that, you can go back.
The Trump administration put out a memo that says that people on home confinement will have to go back to prison at the end of the pandemic. People on home confinement are trying to put the pieces of their lives back together. And Gwen, she took a computer class to further her education and was labeled an escapee.
She got approved for a computer class. It was a 4 to 5 week class.
I picked her up, took her to the computer class. We had a great time. We learned a whole bunch. The week prior, she was in that same class. And on that second week, they claimed that she shouldn't have been there.
We know God has the final word. We're just waiting the final outcome. But in the meantime, we have to fight not just for my mother, but for all the other mothers and fathers and sons and daughters that are out there that are fighting the same situation.
Gwen is an elder, she's a grandmother, she's a caretaker to her 94-year-old mother, and an advocate in her community. It is ridiculous to send her back, but it's the kind of thing that will continue to happen if we do not do something to keep these people home.
All righty. So that's Gwen's story, y'all. So essentially, based on the fact if you watched the whole video or if you just came in, she was at a computer class at 76 years old with her cell phone, and the Federal Department of Bureaus called her. She did not answer, and as a result, they said that that was ruled an escape, and she could have been robbing a bank, and so they were going to treat this as if she was robbing the bank. They have clearly been able to establish that she was actually in this class. But Miss Gwen Levy at 76, who was released on the Care Act, along with other 4,000 people, has been sent back. She had a really good institutional record. She had served the 16 years. Oh, let me tell you about her charge. Her charge was 1 kilo of heroin that she was attempting to conspiracy to sell and distribute. And so, as we know, there's quite a few people with 9 kilos and 5 kilos with way more or less time, depending on their skin color, and also how much money they got. So, which classes they are in. And so, to me, once I went to looking at this story, I could not believe it, because I think about my grandmother, who is, I think, 83 now. But just the mere fact that she came out, and at 76, she's trying to take care of her grandmother, her mother is 94. And I believe that was her only, arrest. This was some investigation they did where they said everybody was in the ring. So she did 16 of the 35 before she was let go. She had pre-existing conditions, and she had also beat cancer while she was incarcerated. So she comes home and she can't get a job, obviously. I mean, let's just be honest. I'm not about discriminating on age, but who's going to hire somebody at 76 with the last 16 years of no record? The other thing is, what exactly is she going to do? So she started volunteering, and that was her way of kind of contributing back, which I thought was pretty cool. The other thing is, there's so many barriers to people being able to survive once they get out. That's a whole nother show I need to do something about, because it absolutely makes no sense. But nonetheless, there's so much power in, the governors of these states, as well as the president, to pardon with one stroke of their pen. They can let out lots of people, and it can be done. And actually, they just literally have uncontrolled power to do so. So I just thought, what was the point in incarcerating this lady? And let me just tell you how much it costs to incarcerate Miss Gwen Levy for 1 year. It's like $38,000. It's $38,000. Do you know what I could do with $38,000? I don't even. You can buy 2 cars at $38,000, 3 depending on what kind you want. But this is what the taxpayers pay, and I'm not trying to reduce this down to money. But when we start talking about what we could use in our communities and what we could do with that kind of money, and the failing healthcare system that we have, and the fact that we couldn't get our hands around COVID, and we got all this money that everybody made money off of, and you mean to tell me we needed because I mean, she was public safety, to send a 76-year-old grandmother back to federal prison on a technicality. Mama, I don't know if you're watching this, but my mama she be tripping about answering her phone, and she's in her 60s. I couldn't imagine her sitting in there in this class trying to pay attention, trying to do something productive, and she just didn't answer her phone. Got back to the house. I mean, 16 years now. Got back to the house like, oh, I missed a call, and then went to explain it. And they're like, yep, sorry about your bad luck. I'm gonna lock you right on up. How does that happen? And let me just tell you, that's just a small piece of what kind of things people get locked up on, technicalities. And I want you all to know there is people out there on probation for decades, y'all. This is the new thing because it's all about money. But so this is not going to only affect, you know what I mean, the younger people or people just now committing crimes. What we're looking at is the possibility of even your elders coming home, being paroled, and having years of paper where you're under somebody's thumb. And please tell me, what sense does that make? Because it certainly isn't going back into the community she came from. Just a thought. So we're going to get into that a little bit more. But let's talk about y'all boy. So honestly, I have seen a mix of opinions about, Bill Cosby getting out. But let me first say this. I am not going to sit here and discredit these people and these women that came forward that experienced any harm at the hands of his actions. That's not going to happen ever in my mouth. It's not going to happen. And I think what we also have to consider is that you have a situation where these women are obviously probably re-traumatized and triggered at this point, along with other survivors. And they came forward and they spoke on record. And now, you know what I mean, there's just a wiping of a slate just like that. Now, on the other hand, let me say this. That is what going to trial is about. This is not to erase anything I said before. The reality and the fact is that is what due process is. The unfortunate thing is there's so many other things that has taken place where due process has failed miserably. And there are so many innocent people behind bars or who have been executed that could have gotten off on just a little bit of work, the proper due process, as well as some DNA. We've seen that exonerated off of death row. No people, personally, no people. So I guess my question to you all is, what exactly? And there's like a gazillion answers. I understand this is a very complex issue, but we also have to be honest that if in fact, I did go to trial, which I in fact did, which is one of the reasons why I feel like I can speak to it, because I went through trial and it's hella hard. It's not easy. It ain't like, Rick Ross know me. I'd rather be judged by 12. Okay, let me tell you, no, it's not what it's cracked up to be. I hear them. I do, which is why I went to trial. However, it is very difficult. And so you have the process of, okay, establishing a new trial, you get that in an appeal and so on and so forth. And so everybody doesn't have, adequate and competent attorneys, let alone appellate attorneys, right? So that's a privilege that Bill Cosby had, because it wasn't privilege, where he could afford that level of work to be done on his behalf. I think the interesting thing about that, in addition to that, is the fact that he wasn't tried just once and got a mistrial. He was tried a second time. And not only and only because of the ability to bring in prior acts from other victims was I think weighed heavily in how he was convicted. So you have prosecutorial misconduct, which is essentially the technicality that he got off on. And so this happens quite a bit. I can tell you that, let's just say, if we had a wand and money was no object, I'm sure if we got the best and the top and the brightest, we could go through and comb through a system of people who have plenty of technicalities in their trial transcripts that can actually get overturned. But guess what? They don't have the privilege of money. Now, I'm not saying that's Bill's problem. I mean, that's his money. You know what I'm saying? But here we are. What we're dealing with is there. I mean, honestly, there isn't any true accountability. And I think that we have to start broadening our understanding and our verbiage and our definition of what accountability looks like. Excuse me. Because this ain't it. It's not. Bill Cosby absolutely should be held accountable. The question to a lot of people is, should that be behind bars? That's going to be up to what you believe in. But let me ask you this. So now he was behind bars. He got a technicality. He's out. Where's the accountability? From what reportings are saying is that he refused to take a sex offender class, which means that there's a piece of him of like, I'm not doing that. So where was the learning, the unlearning? Where is the accountability in that? Also, where is the other people that were complicit in the behavior? You know what I mean? And we can go on down the line with the Harvey Weinsteins and the R. Kellys. Before these people, that one person takes a fall, and I'm not excusing behaviors. I'm talking about a system of people who knew, who looked a certain way, who got paid off, who didn't stand up, that took cases that might have known some stuff and didn't believe victims, the whole nine. And you get to this point where it bubbles up like this, and you've had a whole system of people that have abused it, looked some other way, and nobody is held accountable. I say that because these things don't happen in a vacuum. So what exactly would that look like? So I'm asking y'all now. Yeah, I'm gonna get to y'all stuff because y'all go on in over there. But what does that look like? You know what I mean? In addition to that, the victims. There's so many people that's harmed, y'all, that we don't even get to talk about. You know, I think that we're missing that in terms of the harm. So you got a person and all the harm that person caused, and then the harm that took place with him as well as his wife and his family. So that's a whole lot of harm. And what does accountability look like? And should we do something about what accountability should look like? Because I'm telling you, this is not it. If we don't have another conversation about Bill and he goes off and in some cases, as Courtney has said, buys a network and so on and so forth, what does that mean for the next, your daughter, my daughter, your sons? What does that look like? Because this attitude, like, oh, well, is outside of us. We're going to have to figure out a different way. Because if I was somebody whose intent from my own past and pain to get away with something, I'm gonna figure out who didn't do right. So possibly I'm gonna hide it and get away with it. Now I don't think they consciously think that, but I'm telling you, that's a lot of what's happening. So this thing where we call them out, we cancel them, and there's really no accountability. Then what? So we got 10 more minutes left. I'm going to put some information in the chat here about Miss Gwen Levy's case. Please make sure you sign her petition. Send that text because it's just as simple as aggravating or imploring or suggesting strongly to the people that our taxpayers that pay to do something about it. And they absolutely can. They can. They absolutely can. So let me get into what y'all talking about up here. Hey, y'all. Uh, Brandon says sounds like they need to do something about the brother who's serving a life term for stealing $9. Criminal justice system was a trip, but I didn't even know about that. And stealing $9. That's what I'm saying. That's all over the place. This was the same sisters, the twin sisters, and I think it was Mississippi. You know what I mean? For that case, and they were serving a life sentence. That stuff doesn't make any darn sense. It's just all over the place. Raphael, Bill got that bread to push the system to accountability. No, what he did was he had that bread to pay those attorneys who then were able to dig and dig and dig and find a technicality because I mean, essentially that's what their job is. It is what that's the way the system is made up. It's adversarial, it's win or lose. This stuff ain't about justice, y'all. It's not about justice. It's about winning and losing. And it's so much more loss. There's really no winning. I mean, of course, you know, he would feel like he won. I would say from a outward perspective. But let me just tell you, I think he said he did like 2 years in prison. He was in Fed. To me, and prison is isolation. But to me, state and prison is a different type of time. Any form of isolation is really harmful in any capacity. It is very difficult. It's very difficult. And I don't even know if he was like in like super, you know, high restricted or if he was, I have no idea what his level of housing was. Let's see. James is saying prison is crazy place. Yeah. I don't even, you know what, like you see those shows on like Discovery, A&E and all of those things where they talk about the prisons and that's just one angle. And they sending our children, babies, y'all. I think recently in my hometown there was a 16-year-old that killed a 15-year-old. That's it. One's dead and the other one's going to prison for life. Now what? So this 16-year-old child, because he's a child, is going to spend the rest of his life in prison. He's going to go through every developmental stage he could possibly within that world. And what about his mama and his family? And what about the person that was killed, the victim, the family? You understand what I'm saying? Like the reverb of these acts that, you know what I mean? There will probably never be questions answered on the mom's behalf. What was y'all fighting about in the park? What was the issue? What was going on with you? And you say to me, Marissa, well, who cares? The thing about it is, I tell you this. After a person has been sentenced and they go away, I have found very few people that's like, oh, well, I'm good. Let me go live a peaceful life. Not very many. They have a lot of questions. They hurt, they ache. And it takes, you know, some willingness and a whole lot of reconciliation and restoration and things like that for a conversation to take place. And I'm not saying that everybody's able to do it, but there is some level, from what I understand, of reconciliation in terms of what they think about their loved ones in those last moments and being able to talk to that person who were there. So those are things you kind of have to really do on your own. I really spend a lot of time looking up because I'm very interested in it. And I just know with this cycle of violence that when I don't know if we would get to the point where we can get there, because otherwise violence begets violence, you know. Let me see here. Who else is on here? Whoever signed off on that in her incarceration, talking about Gwen Levy will go to hell. Yeah, okay. Y'all funny. So Courtney says now he can buy the network. Yeah, right. He couldn't buy the network before. What makes you think with a criminal dragging as he has with everything that he's got going on, that he's actually going to be able to buy it? Even if he had all the money. Let's just be honest. Let me just take this out. I'm going to take this a step on some other stuff since Courtney brought that up. You got people with long money who can't even buy themselves as a position in the NFL. This is just the NFL. They play a couple of games a couple of times a month. Make a lot of money though. And you got people, black, who got long money who cannot even you can't get a seat at the table. You can't get a foot in the door. I mean, it would I think we are way off from them giving up any portions of their media control. Yeah, let's rethink that one. Um, will he be able to sue? Now that's a good question. I don't know. But I will say this, and I'm going completely on a limb right now. They've already spent taxpayers' dollars to prosecute him not once, but twice. So then that means you would have to do it again. Then you would have to take all those survivors who were on the stand the first time and put them right back through a public dragging, if you will. I don't know. I don't know if then the question is, well, if you try to sue, then this is what we'll do because you've already admitted it. You know what I'm saying? I can say this from experience. And I'm not, like saying based on what he had to go through. I think there's levels to it. But when you start talking about big public cases, and when you got people who have positions to protect, images to protect, information to conceal, people get real dirty. People get real dirty and desperate, and the tactics and the things that they will go through to get what they want has no limit. And I think when we are thinking about a situation is volatile and very difficult as his is, I don't know, but he's very defiant. And that could be considered good or bad. I mean, I get it. I get it because there's a certain level of defiance. You can be like, no, I'm not taking that. And that's how I felt. So it's a possibility. And, we'll see. And honestly, that will be so interesting, like complete, like coup de grace, because that's a hell of a thing to come out of. Give you back all that time. The fact that you came after me twice, messed up, and then I sue you and win. Oh, have mercy. Babylon right here. I don't know. I guess we'll see. Time will tell. And in other news, we had Kareem Brown, who was pursued relentlessly by Florida federal prosecutors, and her stuff was overturned at the appellate court, which I am very grateful for. And then, of course, you got to consider all the people that was pardoned who did federal crimes by y'all President Trump. I mean, they did some heinous stuff. See, just tell Biden to let all them 4,000 people. You know what? It's probably a gazillion of people. Just tell them to just do a stamp. He ain't even got to sign it. Just stamp his signature on all of them. He don't even have to do it. He can just have his a couple of like interns do it. I mean, I don't know. We're gonna have to figure something else out, y'all. But I'm going to put some information in there about Miss Gwen Levy's. I'm going to go to David, who said he would show out if he sued and won. Let me tell you something. He would have a whole nother pudding pot. It would just be ridiculous. Could you imagine? See, y'all got memes now. That actually happened. It would just be ridiculous. But I tell you, I'm going to go back to the victims and the people who, experience what they experience. We can't lose sight of that because they are affected and they continue to be affected. And so every time he, this is brought up and he says something, and obviously this happens. And if he sues and all of those things, it's just a, constant reliving for them. So, I always think about me, how I would want, things to kind of play out. And then also, my daughters and my son and people that I love. So I think we could probably try that form of compassion or empathy when we start thinking about these things. Yes, he is. He is extremely intelligent. He ain't never been no fool. That's for sure. All right, you guys, thank you for joining me today where I talk about this. I really wasn't going to include Bill Cosby on this because but when I started to think about the justice, the injustice, the system and how it works and how it doesn't, I was kind of like, these are things we all got to think about. And we really need to really think about punity versus accountability and cancel culture and all of that stuff. Because honestly, it is not It is not anywhere close to what we think it should be. And also the many people and systems that are complicit to allowing some of this stuff to go on for the way that it does. And also for people to be sitting up and rotting in the jail it shouldn't be. And, President Biden at this point, I guess, talked about reform and a whole lot of other things. I mean, it's time to put the pen where your mouth is, and it's something he could do about that. I don't think we should let up off of him or anybody else, for that matter, our governors, and definitely the highest office of the land, which is the presidency. So, all right, we still ain't got bill signed. We got a whole Juneteenth day, and we ain't got no other bill signed. I will go into that, but that's a whole nother show too. All right, y'all. I appreciate you guys joining. I'm gonna go ahead and hop in there, look at some of y'all comments, and I will see you guys next week. Peace out. Hey, take care of each other and take care of each other, yourself and one another. All right, peace out.